My rich mother-in-law demanded I sign a postnup only 3 years into our marriage. When I dug deep, I found out why she really needed it. I, 34M, never thought my marriage would come to this. 3 years of what I believed was happiness, trust, and mutual respect, gone in an instant. It started with a seemingly innocent dinner at my in-laws' place last month. My mother-in-law, who's always been somewhat controlling but generally tolerable, pulled me aside while my wife was helping her father with something in the garage. "We need to talk about your financial arrangement with my daughter," she said, her voice low but firm. No pleasantries, no warmth, just business. I was confused. My wife and I had always kept our finances mostly separate, with a joint account for household expenses. We both earned good money. I as a software engineer, she as a corporate lawyer. We'd never had major money issues. "What arrangement?" I asked. She pulled out an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "A postnuptial agreement." I had our family attorney draw it up. I stared at the envelope, not touching it. "A postnup? We've been married for 3 years. Why now?" "My daughter has significant assets to protect. This is non-negotiable." I felt ambushed and insulted. My in-laws came from money, yes, but my wife and I had built our life together on our own terms. Or so I thought. When we got home that night, I confronted my wife. She seemed nervous, but insisted it was just her mother being overprotective. She claimed she knew nothing about it beforehand. I believed her, a mistake I would come to regret. "Just ignore her," my wife said, kissing me on the cheek. "You know how she gets." I let it go mostly, but something felt off. Over the next week, my mother-in-law called repeatedly, asking if I'd reviewed the papers. My wife kept urging me to sign them, just to keep the peace. Finally, curious and increasingly suspicious, I opened the envelope. The agreement detailed assets I'd never known about: property holdings, investment accounts, a trust fund. According to these papers, my wife was worth nearly $5 million. Money she'd apparently had since before our marriage but had never disclosed to me. I confronted her that evening, documents in hand. "Were you ever going to tell me about this?" She looked cornered. It never seemed relevant. We were doing fine without it. $5 million never seemed relevant. We've been splitting dinner bills and arguing over the thermostat settings to save on electricity. "It's complicated," she said. "The money comes with strings attached. My parents control most of it until I turn 35 or have children." I might have believed her if I hadn't noticed her texting frantically while we talked. When I asked who she was messaging, she claimed it was work. Another lie. The next day, I took a half day off work without telling her. Call it intuition or paranoia, but something didn't add up. I drove to our bank and requested statements for our joint account going back 6 months. The banker gave me a strange look, but complied. Sitting in my car, reviewing the statements, I discovered regular transfers, $2,000 each month, to an account I didn't recognize. Transfers made by my wife. I drove home in a daze. She wasn't due back from work for hours, which gave me time. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I needed answers. I went through her desk and found statements from a separate bank account I knew nothing about. More digging revealed a rental agreement for an apartment across town. An apartment I'd never heard of, rented 6 months ago. Was she planning to leave me? Was she having an affair? I drove to the address on the rental agreement. It was a modest apartment complex in a decent neighborhood. I sat in the parking lot, watching, feeling sick to my stomach. After about an hour, a car pulled up. Not my wife's car, but one I recognized nonetheless. It belonged to her cousin. I watched as he unloaded groceries and entered the building. 20 minutes later, my wife's car pulled into the lot. She was supposed to be at work for another 3 hours. I slumped down in my seat, heart pounding. She got out, looking around cautiously before heading inside, the same unit her cousin had entered. I waited another hour, paralyzed with confusion and dread. When I finally gathered the courage to approach the apartment, I heard laughter inside, my wife's distinctive laugh. I knocked. The door opened, and my wife stood there, color draining from her face. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Before I could answer, someone else appeared behind her, a young woman I'd never seen before, maybe early 20s. She looked frightened. "It's okay," my wife said to her. Then to me, "You need to leave. We can talk at home." "No," I said firmly. "We can talk now." "Who is this? What is this place?" My wife stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "This isn't what you think." "Then what is it? Are you having an affair?" She looked genuinely shocked. "What? No. God, no. That's my sister." "You don't have a sister," I said, my voice rising. In 3 years of marriage, she'd only ever mentioned one brother, who lived overseas. My wife leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. "I do. You just never knew about her. No one outside the family does." That night, over dinner at a quiet restaurant far from both our home and the mysterious apartment, My wife finally told me the truth. Her cousin was actually her brother. The young woman was indeed her sister, her half-sister, to be precise, from her father's brief affair years ago. A sister with severe anxiety and developmental issues who had been kept hidden from their social circle due to her mother's shame and rage over the affair. My mother refused to acknowledge her existence. My wife explained, eyes down. When my father died 2 years ago, he left provisions for her in his will, but my mother contested it. The only way to ensure she was taken care of was for me to do it secretly. But why keep this from me? I asked. The money in my trust fund has conditions. If I publicly embarrass the family, I lose control of it. My mother defined that to include acknowledging my half-sister. The postnup was her way of making sure that if she ever cut me off for helping my sister, you couldn't claim any of the family money. It explained the secret apartment, the mysterious transfers, the hushed phone calls. My wife had been supporting her half-sister in secret, against her mother's explicit wishes, risking her inheritance in the process. I should have told you, she said. I was afraid of my mother, afraid you might accidentally say something that would get back to her. Then when she sprung the postnup on us, I panicked. I was angry, not about the money or even the secret sister, but about the lack of trust. We're supposed to be partners. You've been carrying this alone for years. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. Update 1, 3 weeks later. The past few weeks have been a roller coaster. After learning about my wife's half-sister, I insisted on meeting her properly. My wife was nervous but agreed. Her sister, I'll call her S, is 22 but functions more like a teenager. She's brilliant with numbers, but struggles with social situations. Her anxiety makes it difficult for her to hold a job or live completely independently. I learned that my father-in-law had set aside money for S's care, but my mother-in-law had successfully challenged parts of the will, leaving S vulnerable. My wife had stepped in, using her own salary to supplement what remained of her father's provisions. The apartment, the monthly transfers, all of it was to give S a safe place to live with occasional supervision from my wife's brother. I also discovered that my wife had been visiting S at least twice a week for years. All those late meetings and yoga classes had been time spent with her sister. The deception hurt, but I understood her fear. My mother-in-law's control over the family money was absolute until my wife turned 35, still 3 years away. Last weekend, we invited S to our home for dinner. She was clearly uncomfortable at first, but relaxed when we played some board games. She destroyed me at Scrabble with words I didn't even know existed. Seeing my wife with her sister, the genuine love there, melted away much of my anger. Yesterday, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced at our door. Somehow, she'd found out about S's visit to our home. The confrontation was ugly. You've made your choice, she hissed at my wife. Don't expect another penny from the family. My wife stood her ground. That's fine. S's family too. More family than you've been lately. After my mother-in-law stormed out, my wife broke down. The trust fund, which would have set us up for life, allowed us to start a family without financial worries, was likely gone. But as I held her, I realized something. I was prouder of her in that moment than I had ever been. We'll be okay, I told her. We don't need her money. Update 2. 2 months later. We've adjusted to our new reality. My mother-in-law made good on her threat. My wife has been officially cut off from the family fortune. The postnup was never signed, but it doesn't matter now. There's nothing to protect anymore. My wife's brother has fully joined our side, disgusted by their mother's behavior. He still has access to his portion of the family money and has been helping with S's expenses. We've created a small support network for her. S has been flourishing with consistent support. She started an online course in data analysis, playing to her strengths with numbers, and has been spending more time at our place. Last week, she made dinner for us. It was just pasta, but the pride on her face when we enjoyed it was worth everything. The strangest development came 3 days ago. My wife received a letter from her father's former business partner expressing confusion about recent developments. After some back and forth, we discovered something shocking. My father-in-law had created a separate trust specifically for S that his wife couldn't touch. Not only that, but he'd left instructions that if S was ever prevented from receiving family support, a secondary trust would activate for my wife. One completely outside her mother's control. The secondary trust isn't as substantial as what she would have eventually received from her mother, but it's enough to ensure S's long-term care and still leave us comfortable. My father-in-law, it seems, knew exactly who his wife was and had planned accordingly. When my wife called her mother to confront her about hiding the second trust, my mother-in-law hung up. She stopped taking our calls entirely. Final update, 6 months later. Life has settled into a new normal. S moved into the apartment above our garage last month, close enough for support, but with enough independence to help her confidence grow. She's excelling in her data analysis course and has even started doing some freelance work. My wife reconnected with an attorney who'd worked with her father. Turns out, the second trust is even more substantial than we initially thought. Her father had been quietly moving assets for years, anticipating his wife's behavior after his death. The attorney also revealed something else. My mother-in-law had modified the original Postnup draft the family lawyer created, adding clauses that would have given her direct control over any major financial decisions in our marriage. Had I signed it, she would have had leverage over us indefinitely. Last week, my wife's brother called with news. Their mother is selling the family home and moving to Arizona. She's still not speaking to us, which is honestly a relief. The family drama has subsided, replaced by a different kind of family, one built on honesty and acceptance. My wife and I are expecting our first child in the spring. We've decided that if it's a girl, we'll give her my father-in-law's mother's name, a small tribute to the man who, even after death, protected the daughters he loved. As for the postnup that started all this, I sometimes wonder how differently things might have turned out had I just signed it without asking questions. I might never have discovered the truth about S, about the kind of person my mother-in-law really was, or about the strength my wife possessed in secretly caring for her sister all these years. Sometimes the ugliest demands lead us to the most beautiful truths. My marriage isn't what I thought it was 3 years ago. It's deeper, more honest, and far stronger than I could have imagined.